Hey y'all, we are the Updike family located in the mountains of Tennessee. We're excited to share our homesteading journey with all of you. From the farm to the table, we'll share the ins and outs, the ups and downs, from recipes and how-tos to our adventures of running a homestead. So come on in and join us. From our home to yours, welcome to the Updike Family Homestead. Hi friends, welcome to the Updike Family Homestead. This is actually our country store located right here on our homestead. It's just me tonight because James is already in the bed. He has to get up really early in the morning to drive to work, so it's just me tonight. And I just kind of wanted to introduce us and introduce what we do here on our homestead with all of you. We actually got some really exciting news today. We got our official certificate from the state of Tennessee Department of Agriculture saying that they're recognizing us as an official homestead with our farm name, and that was really big for us because probably like a lot of you, when the Lord called us about 10 years ago to start homesteading, we just kind of were like, wait a second, okay, Lord, first, what is a homestead? And second, what does that look like? And so we started researching and really started praying about what God wanted us to do. And it's really more for homesteading purposes. It's all about being able to supply everything that you and your family need right off of your own property. So growing your own food in a garden, or raising livestock for food, raising dairy cattle or dairy goats for your milk products, and anything that you can do on the homestead should be able to be used within your own home. And even at 10 years ago, when the Lord first told us that, we were like, okay, Lord, yeah, we can pray about that. And so we did. We started praying, show us where to homestead, show us where to go, help us learn and take in all that we can. But we didn't quite have the faith at that time to really go into it full gear. We really kind of started off small by just saying yes to our daughter who wanted to raise 4-H chickens. And I was raised in the country, so I was familiar with livestock, mostly cattle. We had some chickens in the past. We've had pigs. We had sheep. I remember my granddaddy actually buying us, or myself and my cousin, a sheep or a lamb to raise and then sell at the market when it was time. And I was devastated to learn that that sheep was not coming back home with me. So, I wanted to fully prepare our daughter. Listen, yes, you got 15 chicks, but it says here that you have to sell or give back at least 3 of them at the chick chain. And she's like, okay, I can do that. And she's 9 years old, and of course, when it came time for her to sell those 3 chickens back, she was devastated, and we ended up bringing 5, 6, maybe more back home with us to replace the ones that she had sold at the chick chain. But our experience with that first event of getting the chickens was funny, because my husband, who is a born and raised city boy, knew absolutely nothing about raising chickens or anything like that. Hang on, my son is coming. So there were just a lot of mistakes that we had to grow from. And mistakes are great because that is how we learn and grow and develop, and how you progress. So our second adventure was getting a goat. Our son was obsessed with the story, oh gosh, I think it was like Gregory the Great Eater or something like that. But anyway, it was a story about George. It was a story about a goat who just ate everything because, of course, goats do eat anything and everything that you can give to them, or that they find, or that they, you know, can break out of the pen. But anyway, so our son was just determined. He wanted a goat, and he wanted to name the goat George. So we traveled back to Virginia for a family visit, and it was like Dr. Seuss coming home, guys. I'm really not even kidding. My husband's father had decided to give us a boat. It's just like just a little fishing boat. And so we're driving back from Virginia, and we got, you know, we had to stop and get gas, and we're pulling this boat, and in the back of the truck there's a crate that is carrying a goat. So literally we were traveling back home with a boat and a goat. And so many people wanted to stop and see the goat and pet the goat. And Colin's like, yeah, his name is George. And my uncle, who actually had given Colin the goat, said, well, his name is actually Cody. He's gone by Cody. He knows his name is Cody. And Colin's like, no, I'm naming him George. And so for the next few years, we called George Cody George. And that's what he was. And he was nothing more than to eat brush. And that was it. He just ate and ate and ate. There was no other purpose for him. And then we let our son also get a piglet. And, you know, the reality is that, you know, when you have a homestead and when you have these livestock, kids can't get attached to these animals because, you know, life happens. I mean, sometimes they're slaughtered for, you know, to provide food for your table, and sometimes they just pass away. So they're great life lessons when you're raising a family and you're teaching children about the life process, and to be thankful to the Lord for providing, first of all, for giving you the ability to care for another living being, and then two, for giving you the ability to have meat and to be able to feed your family. And so we instructed Colin, we told him that, oh my gosh, we said, we do not name our food. That's the rule in our house. Don't name your food. Obviously, Cody George had a name. He was not food. He was a pet. Haley had several chickens that she gave names to. Her favorite, I think, was Penelope, if I'm not mistaken. And we were not allowed to eat Penelope. Penelope was a pet. That chicken followed her around everywhere. But when it came time for our son to raise a baby pig, and we, you know, of course, told him from the get-go, don't name it. It's not a pet. This is food that we're going to put on our table. I think he named it Pork Chop. And I said, Colin, you know, you're not supposed to name your food. He was like, I'm naming it a food because that's what he's going to be one day. He is going to be a pork chop. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're right about that. And so that was a whole nother life lesson. I can remember when we first started raising him, Pork Chop that is, you know, we had a dog kennel that we recycled from, I don't know, somebody was throwing it away, and we're like, hey, we could use that on our homestead. And I think when the pig was maybe 6 months old, he was huge. He broke out of the pen and took off running through the neighborhood. My husband and my son are taking a lasso trying to catch this pig. They finally did catch him and dragged him back to the pen where he had broken out of. And so, yes, our first experiences or adventures of raising animals on our very small homestead at that time was disastrous. And then, you know, our other failure was we had a garden, and unfortunately, you know, where we lived before, we lived on this piece of property that there was no backyard. I mean, it was literally like a straight down slope. And so we planted this garden. We, you know, put so much time and effort into tilling it up and planting seeds, and we planted seeds inside, and we were so proud because they were just beautiful. And then we transferred them outside on this slope, and it was one of the worst rainy springs that we had had in years. everything washed away. All of our money that we had put into getting these seeds and starting them in all these seed, the little seed pod things for the starter kits or whatever, you know, everything, all of our time that we had invested, it just washed away, and we were just done. You know, at this point, we had lost several chickens. The chickens had gotten out, and we were just chasing them around. The pig got out. You know, Cody George had actually, he was really old when we got him, and he had passed away in the winter time. And we, you know, then I think maybe the next spring we got maybe one good harvest, and we learned, okay, wait a second, you know, we're trying to plant on this slope, and everything is washing away. Well, duh. I mean, you know, we had to reconfigure, you know, we had to go back and think again, okay, what did we do wrong? What can we do better this time? And so we built these raised boxes, and they were beautiful, and, you know, it was just one of those things like, okay, well, we finally got a good garden going, and the beans flopped. They did not do well. The squash did not do well. The zucchini did not do well. At that time, I think we had maybe gotten a handful of tomatoes. Nowhere near enough that would have been able to sustain us for an entire year. And that's kind of the goal when you plant a garden in your spring and then your summer and your fall. You're supposed to supply enough to can so that you can stock up your pantry and have food all year round. Yeah, that was not us. And so we kind of just threw our hands up. Okay, Lord, you know, now is just not the time. We're obviously not equipped to do this. We're just going to kind of put this on the back burner and give up for a little bit. Well, the Lord moved us. We sold our home. We started renting a house in a subdivision that had very strict rules. And our plan was, we're going to buy this house and fix it up, flip it, sell it, and then we'll buy our property. Well, that did not work. And, you know, the owner just was like, no, I've decided that I want this much money. And it was a whole lot more than what we had agreed on. So we were like, okay, what do we do now? We were 2 weeks, guys, away from just saying we're homeless. I mean, we didn't have anywhere to go. And I called my mother-in-law, and I was just crying. I'm like, what are we going to do? You know, we have a contract on the other house. The other house is being sold. And we were just a couple of weeks away from closing on that property. And now we have 2 weeks to get out of the house that we were renting in hopes of buying and closing that out. And she was like, you know what? It's going to be okay. God's got this. He brought you guys to that area, which is the same city that we're living in now. And she was like, so he's going to open up the right door. And I was like, okay. All right. So I took a deep breath, and I got on my computer, and I started, you know, looking like, okay, what can we rent? Is there anything that we're even interested in buying or that's in our price range? And I found this ad for a rental home, and I said, okay, didn't see any pictures, you know. I was like, okay, well, this is in our price range, you know, blah, blah, blah. This is going to work out. We'll just have to rent a little bit longer. And I called, and this sweet lady answers the phone, and she says, I'm sorry, but we've actually decided to sell instead of rent. And I said, okay. And out of nowhere, like, this is not me at all. Like, I'm a planner. I'm like, I want to know what's going to happen now, you know, now and then next and the next and the next. And I just said, blurted out, well, what do you think about this? And I suggested a rent to own. And I explained, you know, that we were getting ready to close on our property and that we were ready to buy, yada, yada, yada. And she says, well, I've never actually thought about that. And then she tells me her story. They're getting ready to leave for a mission trip to Africa for 3 months to spend that time with her daughter and her son-in-law, or their daughter and their son-in-law. in Africa, and they were just going to kind of close everything off in the house and go live there for a little while and then come back and sell the property. So she invited us to come out and see the house. And guys, you know, it's just so incredible how the Lord works. So James and I have been together almost 20 years, and the house that we went to see was literally what we had drawn in our dream home when we were going through our premarital counseling, right down to the very detail. This home had a step-down den, it had mountain views, it had a huge front porch, it had a bonus room. I mean, just everything that we had asked God for and had dreamed about 20 years ago was right here. And this is where we are. This is where the Lord led us. And not only was it the dream house, but it was also the size property that we wanted to be able to properly homestead the way that the Lord had called us to do. Unfortunately, our faith still was not strong enough, and I was not ready to give up my career as a teacher. I felt like that was my mission in life, that's what the Lord had called me to do. And all along, you know, we knew what the Lord was telling us. We knew that He was telling us, it's okay, trust in me, homestead. I want you to homestead. And I just wasn't ready to give it up. And so for the first year that we lived here, I continued to work full-time as a teacher. Did a lot of extracurricular things out in the community. My husband continued to work full-time. Now we had a teenage son and a teenage daughter, and our oldest daughter was married. She had 2 kids of her own, living her own life, and just kind of going through the motions of working and not making the time to really do what the Lord had told us to do. And in April of 2018, that all changed. I had been struggling a lot with my health, and I was a perfectly healthy young woman, very active. One of our favorite activities as a family is to go hiking and kayaking and fishing, anything outdoors, camping, all of that. I was teaching English and language arts, and I noticed that I was struggling with the feeling in my fingertips and in my feet. They would always feel like they were falling asleep, and then or having the pins and needles all throughout my fingers and my feet. And I ignored that. I was getting sick all of the time. It was one infection after the other infection, and I never got sick. I never got the flu. I just never got sick. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get rid of it, and I'd have to go to the doctor and get on an antibiotic, and 2 weeks later it's still not gone, and they'd have to give me a steroid shot, and my white blood cell count just kept going up, and my red blood cell count kept coming down. And this went on for about a year, and then I'd say after the first year it started progressing to where I started tripping and falling. I started dropping things. I really struggled with my speech. I would slur my speech. I would try to say one thing and then something else, or even gibberish would come out. And then one day I had gone to the store and completely forgot how I got there. I mean, it wasn't like I forgot where I parked. It was literally, did James drop me off at the door? Is Haley gone to get the car? You know, how did I get here? I mean, it was complete panic. And I was walking back and forth up and down the aisles, just trying to find somebody that could help me, because I didn't know how I got to the store. And that was very frightening for my family and for myself. You know, it just, nobody wants to admit that there's something wrong. And I went to the doctor, And I love my doctor, by the way. I went to the doctor and I said, look, this is what's going on. And I was also very tired all the time. It didn't matter how much sleep I got. I just could not get enough rest. And she ordered lots of tests, and we got the call on a Monday afternoon that they had found something, a spot, or a lesion or tumor, however you want to say it, in my brain. And I can remember just being in complete and total shock. Like, this was not at all what I wanted. This is not what I never got angry at God, but I did get angry at the situation. And I just cried. And for the first time, I think, ever in my Christian walk, I was face down on the ground crying and begging the Lord just to give me 5 more years, because it was 5 years before our youngest, our baby, Colin, to graduate from high school. And I just wanted to be able to see him graduate. And I was just in such despair. I mean, I was so heartbroken. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what was wrong. And before I could even get to my appointment with my neurologist, or with the neurologist in the beginning, we had gotten a second call saying that they had found another nodule or spot, tumor, whatever, on my thyroid. And it was just like, oh my, okay, all right, let's do this. Let's figure out what's going on. And originally they were leaning towards multiple sclerosis. And I went to the neurologist. He said, if I had a list of 100 things, 99 of them will be multiple sclerosis. Came back, no MS, nothing. There's nothing in the spine. There's no other lesions or spots in my brain. There was nothing. But we knew that I was fighting something, because my white blood cell count continued to escalate. And that would have been in, I think, May. Yes, it would have been in May. I had gone in after school had finished for the year, because I had said I'm not doing any more testing until school is out. School's out in 1 more month. So, I don't want to miss any more time from work. I don't want to, disappoint my students for me not being there. We had 8th grade graduation coming up. And, it was just too busy. I was too busy to be sick. And so I think it was, the end of May to the beginning of that June of 2018. My son was I was driving, and I had passed out at the wheel. And my son takes the driving wheel, and he somehow was able to get us off of the road safely, puts the car in park. I somehow get out of the car. He calls his grandma and says, I need help. Mom is really sick. He calls my neurologist and says, something is wrong with Mom, yada, yada, yada. And the neurologist says, we actually just got her scans back from where they do, because, insurance company is wonderful. So they do your brain first, and then they do like this portion, and then they do this portion. And that third portion, they had found lots of nodules all over the tops of my lungs. So something serious was going on. And I was rushed to the ER. I was immediately admitted to the hospital. And even at that time, they still could not figure out what was wrong. And I progressively got worse over the next year. So, fast forward to 2019, or December of 2018, my medical team at Vanderbilt Hospital came back and said, you cannot teach anymore. Like, this is, something is wrong. We don't know what it is, but you just can't teach. I thought somebody had just taken the life out of me. You see, all too often we become what we do, and not necessarily what God wants us to do. And ultimately, I'm His. You know, me being a teacher, that's what I did, but it's not who I was. I am a daughter of the King. I am a child of God, and that's first and foremost. But in February of 2019, I didn't remember that. I found myself in such a dark place, and I just said, they're never going to figure out why I'm sick. They're never going to figure out what's wrong with me, and I'm just going to say goodbye. So that's what I started doing. I started writing goodbye letters to my children and to my husband and to my family and my friends, and I didn't want to leave anything unsaid or unspoken. Like I wanted them to know how proud I was of them and how much I loved them and how much I appreciated them. And a sweet friend of mine, she calls and I'm just crying, and she says, "Do you really think that the Lord is done with you? Because I'm not feeling that." And she really did scream at me. And I'm like crying back, I'm like, "Why are you being so mean?" And I was like, "I don't know, but we have to be realistic." And she says, "I'm not getting that feeling from the Lord. I feel like if the Lord was already done with you, He would have already taken you, and yet you're still here. There is still work for you to do." And I never thought about it like that, but I was like, you know what? You're right. You're right. So there's got to be something else. He's not finished with me. And at that moment, I knew what the Lord was telling me to do. What He had been telling us to do all along. It was time for us to step out on faith and really fully dig in deep to the homesteading way of life. We don't need the extra stuff. We don't need 5 televisions in the house. We don't need this, and this, and this. What you need is to, number one, be close with the Lord. You need to know where you stand with God. That's first and foremost. That's the most important thing. And then number 2, teach others that they need the Lord just as much. And so that's our mission here at the Updike Family Homestead. Our motto is, "Therefore, let it please you to bless the house of your servant, that it may continue before you forever. For you, O Lord God, have spoken it, and with your blessing let the house of your servant be blessed forever." And that comes from 2 Samuel 7:29. We wanted our home and our homestead to be used as a blessing to other people. And we started planning for that. I mean, we, immediately we started, okay, this is what the garden's going to look like. These are the animals that we want to raise. The Lord had given us this property. He had answered our prayers. He had answered our dreams of being able to homestead and having a home that we could homestead. And now it was our turn to step out on faith and to do it. And so I started making soups and bread to my family and friends that, wanted it. And then I had another friend that said, "Hey, these are all great, but could you do some like meals that I could have and be able to just to throw in the oven and give some to my son that he could throw them into the oven?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could do that." And so that's literally what I started doing. And it kept me busy. It kept my mind off of, my illness. It made me feel like I was still valuable to our family. Excuse me. And I just, I was doing what the Lord wanted me to do. And so last summer I started working, towards that goal. The hard part is though, and the reality of my illness is that I have bad days. I have days that I can't do anything. I can't get out of the bed. I cannot function. There's very little that I'm able to do for myself on those bad days. And I really don't have great days anymore, but I have good days, my new normal. And so even with all of the doctor's appointments, and I'm talking, at least 3 times a month, we were back and forth to Vanderbilt, and we live 2 hours away from Vandy. So, that was extra gas and extra, food that we would either have to pack or eat out when we would go, because they're all day adventures. I don't ever go for just one appointment. I'm there and I'm there all day. And I guess it was maybe in August, I, had spoken with my autoimmune specialist, and I was like, this, medication is not working. Something else has to happen. Something else needs, we've got to figure out what this is. And they believed that I did have some type of a rare autoimmune disease. They just could not figure out which one. So we traveled. We were referred, and we traveled to the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And I was there for 2 weeks and came out, with official diagnoses. Now, I wish that I could say that my walk is going to be easy, but I can't say that. It's not going to be. But I do believe that whatever happens with my health, the Lord has already provided a way. He's already, He already has complete and total control over all of that. And so I don't need to worry about it. I mean, yes, I have to be realistic, but I don't need to worry about it. And so, I looked at the doctors when they all came in. They, when they wanted to come in and give me my official diagnosis, 3 of them came in at the same time. And I remember looking over at my husband, who never left my side, but I remember looking over at him, and I'm like, we're going to get our answer today. And they were great doctors. I loved my medical team at Cleveland Clinic, and I love my medical team at Vanderbilt too, but it was just something, they just made me feel so good there. And they, they walked in, and I said, okay, hey guys, what's wrong with me? You're gonna give me my diagnosis, you're gonna give me the treatment, and I'm gonna be cured, and all of this is gonna go away. And one of the doctors starts getting all teary-eyed, and she says, nobody has shown you your scans, have they? And I'm just, no. And she says, well, actually, then I think it was Dr. Otten came in, and he says, you're up here, and you're walking this hallway, and you're giving flowers to other patients and praying with other patients, and we don't even know how. And I'm just standing, I'm sitting there, and what do you mean how? And the other doctor, Dr. Holman, she says that I was everyone's hero on that floor. And that looking at the scans of my bones, that I should not be walking at all. 75% of my hips are dead bone. I have several lesions of dead bone in both of my legs, my arms, my shoulders, my spine. So, yeah, it was a miracle that I was even walking at all. And the drive home was a silent one. Part of me at first was very angry, because it all came from a severe infection that I contracted more than likely 3 or more years earlier. And my body's natural defense to this infection was to form these nodules or these tumors around to protect my organs. And it was just a downhill roller coaster after that. And, I felt so stupid. Like, why didn't I go see someone sooner? Why didn't I stop long enough to pay attention to my own body? And, I didn't feel bad all the time. So, I can't answer that. I can't, nobody can answer that. And so instead of 1 diagnosis, I came out with 5. I have Addison's disease, which is a rare disease where the adrenal glands no longer function. You'd be surprised at how much that controls, but that explains the extreme fatigue and the issues with controlling my blood pressure and my blood sugar. I have stage 2 osteonecrosis. I have hypersensitivity pneumonitis, and I had a severe protein deficiency, and then seizures. So, which is also surprisingly caused by Addison's disease, and some type of autoimmune inflammatory disorder, which they're still trying to figure out and pinpoint which one. And never had to take medicine before a day in my life, and I will have to take medicine for the rest of my life. So on the way home, it was a very quiet drive, and I remember, holding my husband's hand, and both of us were just like, okay, so what now? Like, our bedroom at the time was upstairs in the main house. It was upstairs. We had this beautiful picture window where we got to watch the sunrise every single morning and look out over the entire homestead. And, that was the next question. Do we keep homesteading? Is it time to, is this really a dream of ours, or is it really what the Lord is calling us to do? And we really just, I don't know, we just got this peace all over us, this calm, still voice. And I just looked at James and I said, if the Lord has given me the ability to continue to walk, then I'm going to continue to serve him and do what he's called us to do. Now, James still has to work full time, and without that job, we wouldn't have had the insurance for me to go to the doctor. And so I thank God every day for his career and for the income that he's been able to provide for our family, for the income that's been able to provide for the gas and the medications that I have to have. And I can't not be thankful for that. A lot of it is put on me or my son, and our college daughter, who comes back home, on the weekends, and anytime that she has off, she's home and she's helping. So I'm going to keep going. I just feel like that's what the Lord, this is our mission field. This is where people are going to come. They come and they shop at our country store. And now I'm able to not only share our testimony, but I'm able to share with them natural products that the Lord has provided everything that we need on here on earth. So if it's God made, if it's something that the Lord made, then it's meant for us to be used for good. If it's man-made, our bodies weren't designed that way. Our bodies were not designed to consume the man-made processed products that we're all ingesting. So like your sugar, people don't realize that sugar, unless it's organic and all natural, processed sugar has a lot of extra stuff in it that is so bad for you. Margarine is so bad for you. If it's man-made, no. If it's God-made, then it's okay to eat and it's okay to use. And so like, even though I make soaps and I make deodorants and alpaca dry balls and natural laundry detergent and soy candles, everything in here, are made from organic, God-made products. It's not anything that I have bought, off site anywhere. It's things that we try to utilize and make here. And all of my breads, I grind my own flour, and I try really hard not to ever use anything that's pre-made or processed. And that way families are eating healthier, and they're getting they're not only getting healthier meal options, but they're getting lessons on what we should be eating, and what a homestead is and what it looks like, And that is our mission. I mean, our mission here on this homestead is to serve the Lord and to use what He's given us to serve others. And I'm not ready to let that go, because if the Lord was done with me, He would have taken my legs. If the Lord, or my ability to walk, if He was done with me, He would have already called me home. And He's not. He's not done with us yet. And so, as you're listening to our little story about how we got our homestead and how we got started, really take this time to reflect. What are the natural gifts and talents and abilities that the Lord has given you? And how can you use them to serve Him? That's what He wants us to do. We are servants for Him. What is He asking you to do to serve others and to be a shining light for Him? So that's the end of it, guys. I mean, that's the end all be all. What are you doing to serve the Lord? Thanks so much, guys, for watching. I look forward to talking to you again. God bless.